What's up guys, Cameron here from Drums and Drams, and in today's video, I'm gonna be reviewing a whiskey that has absolutely shocked me. This is some ridiculously good stuff. I tasted it on a live stream recently. It was sent to me by Jimmy Copeland, so thank you Jimmy for sending this my way. Truthfully guys, I had no expectations for this whiskey. I remember seeing some early reviews of this brand. I didn't think anything of it. I would have never known that something like this, something so recently put on the market that is a blending operation, could be so fantastic. So what am I talking about? This is K-Luke Batch 5 at 119.4 proof. The sample label also says high and low rye on it. Either way, whatever this is, I love this whiskey. I wanted to say that at the beginning of this video and not wait till the end to kind of give you my final thoughts. So the whole point of this is just to talk about why I love it. All right, so we're gonna nose this thing and taste it, talk about everything that's going on here. I'm not gonna get into any of what's in the blend. I have no idea. I got this sample with zero information about it. I opened this sample, I drank the whiskey, may as well have been blind because I had no idea what to expect, and it was just fantastic stuff. So instead of going into all the particulars and the age, and I don't even know what they provide, about their blends at K-Luke, I don't care. I just wanna taste this stuff, talk about it, and please, if you've had any of these K-Luke products, drop me a comment in the comment section. Tell me what you think of these things. If you have like an order that you prefer of the different batches, I don't know anything about it, but this is batch 5. It's amazing stuff. Let's see what we get here on the nose. So the nose of this whiskey is all dark fruit, thinking maybe along the lines of like an aged 8 to 11 year MGP product, when you kind of get that dark plum, dark grape, those kinds of notes. I would say that's where this whiskey really centers, is on those dark fruits. Good amount of spice here. It is a little sharp on the nose, and I do remember that from the live stream that I first tasted this on. It felt a little sharp up front on the nose, and I was like, I don't know what this is gonna be like. You can get past that. I mean, I'm getting past that now. That is maybe the one deficiency that I'm finding on the nose. Otherwise, this is just a super dark, extremely rich, and very concentrated whiskey. One other thing that I should call out on the nose is like this butteriness, almost like a brown butter. There's a little bit of a nuttiness going on in here as well. I guess if I combine those things, this is almost like kind of like a Nutter Butter type note, or maybe like a Nutella kind of note. Something kind of creamy, a little decadent, that combines a nuttiness, but also combines it with like a buttery, I said brown butter kind of thing. That is definitely in here as well. A little bit of cinnamon spice, talking like aromatic cinnamon stick, cinnamon bark, not your bright candied cinnamon. This is all dark, all rich, very aromatic, just a really great nose here. Last note that I'm gonna call out before I get this thing on the palate is kind of like a buttercream, or almost like a root beer float type vanilla note, if that makes sense. So sometimes I get this on MGP, maybe 8-year products. Old Louisville Batch 1 had kind of this, I really don't know the best way to describe it. Buttercream might be the best way. Butter pecan, and what did I say? Maybe like a root beer float kind of vanilla. It's this funky, creamy, vanilla, buttery thing, all right? So I don't know how to describe that any better than I am, and I'm probably doing a very poor job at doing it. A Dancing Goat pick that I've had before, which was an MGP 36% rye bourbon, I think it was 8 years. A Dancing Goat pick has had this note before. Like I said, old Louisville Batch 1. Either way, this has that weird, funky, vanilla buttercream thing in it. So combined with those dark fruit notes, combined with that cinnamon bark, kind of aromatic cinnamon spice, that Nutter Butter, I said kind of brown butter. I mean, overall, it's kind of a buttery nose to this whiskey. And if I do recall from the live stream, I think someone mentioned there's Indiana and Kentucky whiskeys in here. That would make sense. I'm getting things from like an aged MGP profile. I'm also getting something that reminds me of like classic Kentucky bourbon of a moderate age. That would all make sense to me. Again, I don't know what's going on. I intentionally did not look things up before I shot this video. I just wanted to give some raw impressions of what I remember being a fantastic whiskey, and it is living up to the expectations and impressions that I had of it before. So let's try it on the palate now. Cheers. Everything I talked about on the nose, it's all there on the palate. There's actually the addition of kind of like a like a brighter candied fruit, maybe like a green apple Jolly Rancher. I've said this note before, and I think I may have said it on some MGP bottlings or blends possibly. There's like a green apple Jolly Rancher on the front of the palate, which adds a kind of nice sweetness, also a nice little tang to it as well. Keeps it, you know, interesting. It keeps it a little brighter to some degree because there's so much dark in this whiskey. To have a little contrast in there is nice. This is just a really nice whiskey. I'm gonna go in for a second sip because the first sip for me is just acclimate to the fact that this is really good. It is what I expected. It's what I remembered. Let's go in for a second one now. It's hard to believe that a newer label like K-Luke is putting out whiskey that tastes like this. I do not know the price of this. I received a text from somebody offering to pick up what was a batch 1 still sitting on the shelf. I wanna say it was 110, 115, maybe something like that. This whiskey would earn every bit of that price point and maybe a little bit more, like 130, 140. I'm not sure if there's a secondary market for these K-Luke bottlings, but this batch 5 to me competes with like, I mean, without a side-by-side comparison, this is a tough thing to say and fully stand behind, but some of the older MGP single barrel bottlings that I've had of Smooth Ambler, Old Scout, like Blom Brothers, there are so many of those same elements in here, but not singularly in that MGP realm. There are also these buttery, slightly nutty things that contrast that in this blend that, in my mind, actually possibly make it more interesting than some of those one-dimensional single barrels, which are fantastic in their own right. I have a hard time wrapping my head around how this whiskey is so good. Part of me thinks, is this like a double-barreled product, like a rebarreled product? I have no idea, but the concentration of flavor in here is remarkable. So I'm gonna take one last sip, but you can clearly see where I stand on it. I think if you find this for $130, $140 and under, buy 2 of them. You're not gonna be disappointed. This whiskey is gonna appeal to people that like MGP, that like older Kentucky bourbons, Buffalo Trace, all of these notes, these dark fruit notes, these more classic notes, this butteriness. You're gonna hit on a lot of things that a lot of different whiskey drinkers can appreciate. Yes, there is a little sharpness to it. I can look past that in this blend because it's delivering such amazing flavors that even if that delivery is a little bit heavy-handed on the front end, a little bit stinging, whatever. It's 119.4. It might hit like 125. I'll take it. Let's do one final sip. Last thing I should say is that the oak profile of this whiskey, which this whiskey, frankly, seems old, and that would defy my expectation as to what people are able to get their hands on these days to blend with. But again, no idea how old this stuff actually is. It seems old with the flavor notes, but the actual oak profile of the whiskey is so well integrated. And what do I mean by that? Well, if you take a whiskey like a Knob Creek 12, for example, you can taste distinctly the oak in that whiskey, which comes off as like a very leathery, almost like you're walking into a rick house is what it, you know, that smell of the rick house and all that wood, that's what it tastes like. And it is a standalone note that in that case with Knob Creek 12 kind of overpowers the whiskey, to be honest. There is a lot of oak here, but it's so well integrated into the darker fruit notes, which is something that Buffalo Trace typically does very well and MGP typically does very well. It's so integrated into the dark fruit notes and into the kind of more classic Kentucky bourbon buttery notes in here that you don't even notice the oak note. And to achieve that in a whiskey like this, where every other part of the whiskey seems very old and the oak does not, or it doesn't stand out, that is to be commended to like the highest degree. I feel like I'm on a kick right now of reviewing a lot of fantastic whiskeys. Maybe that's just by choice, but I love this K-Luke Batch 5. And for those of you out there that might see this sitting on a shelf, buy, don't think about it. Please don't think about it. And send me one if you get an extra. All right, so that's gonna do it for this review. I think this is fantastic whiskey. I'd love to hear your thoughts in the comments if you've had the opportunity to try any of the K-Luke bottlings. What do you think about the pricing? What do you know about this? Because Again, I intentionally did not do any research before this. Let me know in the comments, hit that like button, subscribe to the channel if you enjoyed this video. I feel like I'm just loving on this whiskey, and maybe that's super boring, or maybe that's not super boring. I don't know. Cheers, I'll see you guys next time here on Drums and Drams.